You spend years showing up. You hold their hand across busy streets. You memorize their favorite bedtime stories. You sit on hard bleachers in freezing wind just to watch them warm a bench in a soccer game. And you think, no, you believe, that love like that means you'll always be included. Until one day, you're not. It was a Thursday. Not the kind of day where life changes. Just a Thursday. Daniel came into the kitchen after school, tall and tired, his hoodie half zipped, his hair doing that thing where it somehow defied both gravity and logic. He was 17 now, almost 18. Still my boy. In shape, but not always in presence. "Hey," I said, rinsing out a mug. "How was school?" "Fine." He dropped his backpack in the usual spot, grabbed a granola bar, and leaned against the counter like he owned the place. And then, mid-chew, he said it. "Hey, so, I wanted to talk to you about something." Which, in teenage language, almost always means I'm about to hate what comes next. "Okay," I said carefully. He cleared his throat. "It's about graduation." I smiled, relieved. "Oh, are they letting you decorate your cap? Because if you need help..." "No," he cut in. "It's not that." He looked away for a second, then back at me. "I was thinking, maybe you could, skip the ceremony." And just like that, the bottom fell out of my stomach. At first, I laughed. Not a real laugh. A confused, surely I heard that wrong kind of laugh. "I'm sorry, what?" He looked uncomfortable. Scratched the back of his neck like the collar was too tight. "It's just, I know it's a big deal to you. And it's fine. Really. But all my friends are just going with each other. It's gonna be crowded. Weird. And, I don't know. I'd just rather keep it chill." "Chill," I repeated. "You'd rather keep your high school graduation chill." He shrugged. "Yeah." There was no malice in his voice. No sarcasm. Just a blunt honesty that teenagers have when they assume you'll recover. I nodded slowly, trying to mask the tiny crack that had appeared behind my ribs. "Okay," I said. "You want me to skip your graduation? I'm not trying to be mean. It's my thing. You know? My thing. As if I hadn't been there for every other thing. As if this moment, this milestone, hadn't been one I'd carried in my heart since the day he learned how to write his name." I nodded again. He took my silence as understanding, smiled awkwardly, and disappeared upstairs, granola wrapper still in hand. I stood there for a long time, not angry, not even fully sad yet, just stunned. That night, I called my sister, Melissa. "Tell me I'm not crazy for being hurt," I said, before even saying hello. "You're not crazy," she answered immediately. "You're a mom." I sat on the edge of my bed, blanket wrapped around my shoulders like armor. "I don't get it. I was there for everything. Every birthday, every stomach flu, every late-night panic over math homework. And now he wants me to stay home like I'm some embarrassing extra." "Laura," she said gently, "he doesn't want you to stay home because he doesn't love you. He wants you to stay home because he's trying to figure out where he ends and you begin." And there it was. The line I hadn't realized we'd crossed. The place where my story about him ended, and his story without me began. I cried that night. Not because of the rejection, though, let's be honest, it felt like one, but because I could feel the shift. My baby had become someone with a whole world I didn't fully belong to, and maybe I never would again. The next morning, I made pancakes like I always do on Fridays. He came downstairs, still groggy, mumbling good morning as he reached for the syrup. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I could think was, "Don't make this about you." Because this wasn't about being left out of a ceremony. This was about the ache of letting go without being asked, and I was still learning how to do that. But before we dive into this thrilling story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like, so that YouTube can show you more content like this. There's no name for the grief mothers go through when their children begin to pull away. No funeral, no goodbye, just silence. And silence, I've learned, is a cruel kind of mourning, because they're still there, still alive, still healthy, still moving through the house, brushing past you on the way to the fridge, laughing with friends in the next room, closing their door with a quiet finality that says, "This part isn't yours anymore." The day after Daniel asked me not to come to his graduation, I went through the motions. I cleaned the house with more energy than necessary. I reorganized the spice rack, I vacuumed under the couch cushions. Twice. Every mother I know has a different way of coping. Mine is pretending I'm fine while deep cleaning surfaces no one ever sees. Around 11 Mom, I found myself staring into his room. The door was open, his bed a mess of blankets and hoodies, textbooks spilling off the desk, a half-eaten granola bar on the nightstand. Normal, loud, beautiful, messy normal. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and whispered, not to him, but to the universe, why does this hurt so much? That night, I scrolled through old photos. Daniel in his preschool graduation gown, oversized, blue, crooked cap falling over one eye. Daniel in the second grade play, face painted like a lion. Daniel at 12, hugging me tight after scoring the winning goal in a soccer game he nearly didn't want to play. In every single one, he was smiling. Not for the camera, for me. Because I was there. I was always there. And now, suddenly, I wasn't supposed to be. Not because I failed. Not because I did anything wrong. But because that's what growing up does. I wanted to talk to him that night. To ask if he really meant it. To plead, just a little. To be included. But I didn't. Because I knew what that would be about. My fear. My heartbreak. My need. And that's not the version of love I want him to remember. Instead, I sent a text to Melissa. Me. Still hurts. Melissa. Of course it does. Me. How do I not take it personally? Melissa. You can't. It is personal. But it's not about you. Me. That makes zero sense. Melissa. It will. Just not today. The following weekend, we were driving to the store when I tried something small. Hey, I said, keeping my tone light. Have you thought about what you want to do after the ceremony? He glanced at me, wary. I mean, like, dinner? Something low-key? We could order in, or I could cook your favorite. He shrugged. I don't know. Probably just hang with the guys. A pause. Then, a quiet, almost guilty afterthought. But maybe lunch with you. Just us. And there it was. Not an invitation back in exactly, but a crack in the wall, a breadcrumb, a maybe. And I grabbed it with both hands, gently. Lunch sounds perfect, I said. And I meant it. Because sometimes motherhood is not about being everywhere. Sometimes it's about holding sacred the places they still let you into, even if it's just lunch. Later that night, I stood in the bathroom brushing my teeth, staring at my reflection. I looked older, not in the wrinkle and gray hair kind of way, but in the soul-wrinkled way, the kind that comes from loving deeply and losing quietly, and doing it anyway, over and over. And as I turned out the light, I said it softly. For me, not him. I'll keep showing up, even when I'm not invited, even if it's just in spirit, even if it's just from a few feet further away, because that's what motherhood is too. Not control, not closeness, presence. Steady, silent, unconditional presence. The thing about being asked to step back is that the world keeps moving forward in front of you. The school emails keep coming. Photos from the senior parents group start flooding in. People in line at the grocery store chat about caps and gowns and caterers. And you smile politely while every word feels like sandpaper on your chest. Because no one knows you're not going. No one knows you've been quietly benched. And it's not like you can just say it. Oh, my son asked me not to go to graduation. He just wants his friends there. How do you say that without sounding like a punchline in your own story? It started with a group text. A few of the other moms from Daniel's old elementary school were planning a joint celebration. Picnic style, balloons, slideshow of baby photos. So cute. I stared at the message, thumbs hovering over the screen. I could feel the old reflex kick in. Say yes, bake something, volunteer for setup, bring extra napkins. But I didn't reply, not because I didn't want to celebrate, but because the thought of standing there, clapping and smiling while my son wasn't even expecting me to show up, it felt like too much. Like hosting a birthday party you weren't invited to. That week, I ran into Amanda, one of the moms from the group, at the farmer's market. She was beaming. I can't believe it's really here. Graduation. How are you holding up? I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, it's surreal, right? We're putting together a memory board, she said. You should send some pictures of Daniel. We want to include everyone." I froze. "Actually, he's keeping it low-key," I said, trying to sound casual. "Doesn't really want the whole celebration thing." Amanda blinked. "Really? Wow. That's unexpected." I could see it in her face, the confusion, the polite attempt not to ask more, and beneath it, my own shame, even though I knew I didn't do anything wrong. That night, I sat in my car in the driveway, unable to go inside just yet. It was quiet, too quiet. I stared at the dashboard and felt it building, that ache in the middle of my chest, the one that said, "You are not the mom you thought you were," the one that whispered, "Other moms are posting cap and gown photos. You're posting sunset pictures like you're okay." But I wasn't okay, not entirely. And not because Daniel was doing anything cruel or rebellious. He wasn't slamming doors or yelling or breaking rules. He was just growing, and somehow that hurt more. When I finally went inside, he was at the kitchen table, earphones in, laptop open, half a plate of chicken nuggets abandoned beside him. I walked past him without saying anything, poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter. He didn't look up, and maybe that should have hurt. But in a strange way, it didn't, because this was life now, coexisting, circling, living parallel and overlapping lives, still connected, just differently. Later, I found myself scrolling through my photo library again, this time not crying, just remembering. One picture stopped me cold. Daniel at around age 5, curled up asleep on the couch, my sweater wrapped around him, his hand still holding onto the sleeve like a security blanket. I remembered that night like it was yesterday. He'd had a nightmare. I'd gone to check on him, and he'd asked if he could sleep downstairs, just for a little bit. I didn't say no. I made him hot chocolate. We watched cartoons. He fell asleep with his head on my lap. Back then, love was simple, visible, loud. Now it was subtle, but maybe not smaller, just harder to recognize. A few days later, Daniel came home and dropped a sealed envelope on the counter. "School gave us these," he said. "Invitations, in case you want to come. I mean, I know we talked, but you can still have one." He was already halfway up the stairs before I could respond. I picked up the envelope. It was thick, formal, his full name embossed in elegant silver print, Daniel James Reardon, class of 2025. It took my breath away. I sat down at the kitchen table and held it like something sacred, because it was, not the invitation to the event, but the offering, the soft edge of him still remembering that I was part of the story, that I still mattered, even if I didn't have front row seats. I didn't text him to say thank you. I waited until dinner, when we were both reaching for the ketchup. I looked at him and said, "I got the envelope." He didn't meet my eyes, just nodded. "Thank you for that," I said gently. Another nod. Then, finally, a quiet, "Yeah, of course." And that was it. But it was everything. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, "Sometimes love doesn't show up in hugs or I love yous. Sometimes it shows up in a sealed envelope on a kitchen counter, in a nod, in a grunt, in the soft offering of space, and the even softer hope that you'll stay anyway. And I will, even from the back row, even when I don't get a seat at the table. I will be there, because that's what we do. We show up, we stay, we love, even and especially when it hurts. If you're not invited in, knock anyway, softly. There's a moment in every parent's life when you realize you don't need your child to be a child anymore. You just need them to be real. And that moment doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And that whisper came for me one night while making tea. It had been a long week, not dramatic, just long in the way only emotional weeks are, where nothing explodes, but everything aches. I'd buried myself in work, in chores, in podcasts that promised to help me redefine empty nest years, even though technically I wasn't even there yet. I told myself I was doing fine, but something had settled in my chest like a weight, the growing sense that Daniel was building a life I no longer had a map to, and I needed, to know if I still had a place in it. That Friday night, he came home late, not irresponsibly late, just after dinner, after dark. after I'd already replayed every bad scenario and then quietly tucked them away. I was in the kitchen, making tea, chamomile, my nervous habit. He walked in, dropped his keys on the counter, and reached for a slice of leftover pizza. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "Hey," he answered, chewing. I stood there, watching him. He was taller than me now, broader, older in the way teenagers get overnight, like someone fast-forwarded the footage while I wasn't looking. He didn't notice me staring at first, but then he did. "What?" he asked, grinning with pizza in his hand, and before I could stop myself, I said it. "I miss you." The words just slipped out, soft, honest, undeniably true. Daniel froze, not in fear, just in surprise. He swallowed his bite. "I'm right here," he said. And God, I wanted that to be enough, but it wasn't. "Physically, yes," I said, smiling gently, "but not in the way it used to be." He leaned on the counter. "You mean like when I used to tell you everything?" I nodded. He looked down at the pizza. "It's not because I don't want to," he said. "It's just, I don't always know how anymore." That sentence cracked me wide open. Not because it was sad, but because it was true, and brave, and exactly what I needed to hear. I walked over and sat on one of the stools by the island. "I know," I said. "I think I've been holding you to the version of you I still carry in my head. The one who wanted me at every school event and needed help with homework and asked me questions about everything." He smiled a little. "Yeah, I'm not really that guy anymore." "No," I agreed. "You're not." And then I paused. "But I'd really love to get to know the new one." He looked at me, fully, for the first time in what felt like weeks. "I'd like that too," he said. The rest of the night was easy. We sat on the couch and watched half of a bad action movie. He made fun of the explosions. I made popcorn. At one point, he even handed me his phone and showed me a meme he said reminded him of me. It was mildly insulting, and I laughed anyway. And somewhere in between the jokes and the silence, the wall between us loosened, not disappeared, not yet, but loosened, enough to breathe through. Before bed, I tapped on his door. He was lying on his bed, scrolling. "Hey," I said. "Thanks for earlier." He shrugged, trying not to make it a thing. "Yeah, no problem." And then, right before I turned to go, he said it. "Mom?" "Yeah, I'm glad you said something." I didn't know how to start. I nodded, my heart catching. "That's what moms are for," I said. He smiled. "Yeah, I guess." And for the first time in a while, I went to bed not wondering how he felt. I knew. He still loved me. He just needed me to knock first. And if you are enjoying the story, help us out by subscribing to the channel and giving a like. It's funny how the smallest things start to feel sacred once you've been excluded. A glance, a text, a shared joke at the dinner table. After weeks of silence and distance, even the tiniest moments with Daniel felt like gold dust. And just like that, I found myself holding on to everything, but gently, this time. Not clinging, just noticing, just grateful. We fell into a new rhythm after that night in the kitchen. We didn't talk constantly, but we started to talk again. Real talk. Not just the logistics of school and laundry and what's for dinner. He told me about a class he hated. I told him about a weird coworker with too many coffee mugs. He made me listen to a song that wasn't really my vibe, and I pretended to hate it less than I did. It wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary, and I had forgotten how wholly ordinary can feel. Then, one afternoon, something shifted. I was sitting on the back porch with a cup of coffee, the kind of day where the sunlight felt like an apology, after a long string of overcast emotions. Daniel walked outside, earbuds dangling from one ear, phone in hand, and sat down next to me. No invitation, no announcement, just sat. "Hey," I said, surprised but calm. "Hey." He sat in silence for a moment, then turned to me. "So, they're giving each senior 2 tickets for the ceremony." I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my heart had already started pounding. He kept talking. "I already gave one to Dad, but I was thinking I could ask for a 3rd. I blinked. "You can do that." "Yeah, you just have to request it early." He looked at me, cautiously, like the words were fragile. "I can try, if you want to come." I didn't cry. I smiled, small and slow and soft, and said, "I'd love that." And that was all. No lecture, no guilt trip, no reminder of how hurt I'd been. Because this wasn't about winning a battle. This was about being invited back into the room and choosing to walk in without dragging the past with me. Later that night, I sat on my bed with my laptop and looked up the graduation date again. I checked the time, the location, the parking instructions. I added it to my calendar, not as a confirmation, but as a quiet declaration to myself. I will be there. If he makes room for me, I will show up. The next few days were lighter. Daniel didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. But there was a shift between us, a softness, a shared understanding. He started sitting with me during commercials again. He asked what I was cooking, even if he still chose frozen pizza instead. He laughed when I mispronounced something on TikTok, but not in a mean way. In the "you're still my mom, and I secretly like you" way. It was subtle, but it was something. One evening, as I was making dinner, I heard him talking to a friend on the phone in the next room. "Yeah, my mom might come," he said. "She's cool. It's not a big deal." I stood frozen at the stove. "She's cool. It's not a big deal." But to me, it was everything. That night, I wrote a note and left it on his nightstand. Just one sentence. "Thank you for letting me be part of your world again. I'll always try to earn it." He didn't mention it the next morning, but he emptied the dishwasher without being asked. And I smiled, because sometimes love speaks in dishwasher gestures and unspoken thank yous, and I was learning to listen better. The morning of the ceremony, I stood in front of my closet like a teenager getting ready for her first dance. Too much, too plain. Do I look like I'm trying too hard to be invisible? I finally settled on a navy blouse Daniel once complimented when I wore it to a parent-teacher conference. It was simple, safe, me. As I put on a pair of earrings, small silver hoops, nothing flashy, I caught my reflection in the mirror and whispered, "Don't cry, not today," but I already knew I would. When I arrived at the venue, it was buzzing. Parents with programs and cameras, graduates in flowing gowns, adjusting caps, hugging too tight. I spotted Daniel before he saw me. He was off to the side, laughing with his friends. Tall, composed, his gown slightly crooked, like he'd put it on last minute, his cap tilted back like he didn't care how it looked, his grin full of youth and freedom. He looked like a man, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe, because somewhere in that body and voice and independence was still my baby, the one who used to clutch my finger instead of my car keys. He caught my eye from across the crowd and lifted his chin. A nod. Nothing big, no wave, no smile, but it was for me, and it was enough. I found my seat toward the middle of the auditorium. Not the front, not the back, just present. I sat beside an older couple I didn't know. The woman next to me was already crying and hadn't even opened the program. "Which one's yours?" she asked. "The tall one in the blue stole," I said. She squinted. "He's handsome. Looks confident." I smiled. "He is." The ceremony began. Names were called. Speeches were given. Applause rose and fell like waves. I clapped for every student. But when they called his name, Daniel James Reardon, I felt something rise in my chest I couldn't describe. Pride, yes, but also something deeper. Awe, grief, joy, loss. 1,000 emotions in one breath. I didn't cry when he walked the stage. I cried when he walked off it. Because that's when it hit me. This was him walking forward without me, and I was clapping from the sidelines, exactly where I needed to be. After the ceremony, the crowd spilled outside, families reunited, cameras flashed, laughter echoed off brick walls and concrete. I waited by the far corner of the school building, not wanting to push through the chaos. He found me. "Hey," he said, adjusting his gown. "Glad you came." I smiled. I wouldn't miss it. He handed me a rose. A real one, not a cheap fake from a gift vendor. "School gave them to all the grads," he said, looking down. "Said we should give them to someone who got us here." He held it out to me. I took it, and I cried. Not ugly sobs, just a quiet, steady stream, the kind of tears that come from being seen. I hugged him, tight, maybe tighter than I should have. He let me. "I'm proud of you," I said. He nodded. "I know." And that was it. We didn't take a selfie. We didn't linger. He went off to meet his friends. I went to my car, and as I sat there, holding the rose in my lap, I didn't feel left behind. I felt full, because love doesn't always mean standing beside them in the spotlight. Sometimes, love is standing behind them quietly, so they know they're not alone when they step into the light. That night, I placed the rose in a glass on the kitchen counter. No frame, no plaque, no social media post. Just a flower, just a moment, just a mother, learning how to let go with grace. The morning after graduation, I stood at the kitchen sink staring out the window like it was a movie screen. It was a beautiful day, birds chirping, sunlight streaming through the trees. One of those mornings that feels hopeful even when your chest is still heavy. Daniel hadn't come home until after midnight. I'd heard the front door open softly, his shoes hitting the hallway floor, the fridge door opening. He didn't wake me, but I had been awake anyway. He slept in, as he should. I made coffee and sat with my notebook, staring at the blank page for a long time before writing the first sentence. Who am I when I'm not the mom in charge? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. Because for 17 years, I'd been the scheduler, the reminder, the ride giver, the lunch packer, the rule enforcer, the cheerleader, the comforter, the everything. And suddenly, I wasn't those things anymore. Not completely. Now, I was something else. Something quieter. Something adjacent. That afternoon, Daniel came into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Hey," he said, grabbing a glass of water. "Hey," I answered, smiling. He leaned on the counter. "Thanks for coming yesterday." I nodded. "Thanks for letting me." He looked down. "I should have asked you from the beginning. I just didn't think it mattered." There was no anger in his voice, just honesty. "I know," I said, "but it did. It does." He nodded again, slower this time. "I get that now." He didn't apologize, and I didn't need him to, because what he gave me was better, a recognition of my love, and a space to keep showing it in a way that fit who we both were now. Later that week, I met up with Rachel, my oldest friend and longtime parenting sounding board. At a little coffee shop we always said we'd visit but never did. She hugged me before we even sat down. "Survived the ceremony?" she asked with a smirk. "Barely," I smiled, but it was worth every emotion. We talked about how things were shifting, about how scary it is to realize your kid doesn't revolve around you anymore. "How do you do it?" I asked. "You've been in this phase longer than me." She stirred her tea. "You stop trying to be the center, and you start being the anchor, something they don't always look at, but always know is there." That line hit me. I didn't need to be at the front of Daniel's life anymore. I just needed to be part of the foundation. That night, Daniel came into the living room while I was reading. "Hey," he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Yeah. Is it cool if I go on a trip this weekend? Just a few of us, driving to the lake house. Nate's parents will be there." I closed my book slowly. My instinct, the old version of me, wanted to ask 100 questions, but instead, I said, "I trust you." He blinked. "You sure?" "Yes," I said. "And if something changes, or you feel off, call me. No judgment, just support." He nodded. And then, in a quiet voice, he said, "Thanks, Mom." When he left 2 days later, I didn't cry. I waved from the porch, watched his car disappear down the road, then went inside and put on my favorite playlist from the years when he was still small. I didn't play it to mourn. I played it to remember, because those years built us. And now, we were building something new. Later, I wrote in my journal, "Letting go isn't a goodbye. It's a new kind of hello, one that says, I see who you're becoming, and I'm still here. Just quieter now, just gentler. Still yours, always yours." And I meant it, because even if I'm not needed in every room he walks into, I'll always be the one keeping the light on at home. The Sunday after Daniel's trip, the house felt still in a way I hadn't yet gotten used to. It wasn't sad. It wasn't empty. It was just different, like a chapter had ended, and I was standing on the first blank page of whatever came next. He got home that afternoon, dropped his bag in the hallway, walked into the kitchen like he never left. "Hey," he said, pulling a water bottle from the fridge. "The lake was great." "That's good," I said, smiling. He sat at the counter, elbows up, hair still messy from the drive. "Guess what?" he said. "Nate's dad grilled the worst burgers I've ever had, like criminally bad. I didn't know meat could taste like sadness." I laughed, and he grinned. Then why'd you eat it? Because I didn't want to be rude, he shrugged. But I fed half of it to the dog. I raised an eyebrow. You're terrible. I know, he said. But the dog loved me. We stood in the kitchen for a while after that, not rushing to get anywhere, just being. He told me a little more about the trip. I asked a few questions, carefully, not digging, just listening. And then he asked me something I hadn't expected. Did it bother you when I said you didn't need to come to graduation? I blinked. He wasn't joking. He wasn't trying to test me. He really wanted to know. I took a breath. Yeah, I said honestly. It did. He nodded, looking down. But not because I needed the moment, I added. Because I wanted to be there for you. That's all. I get that now, he said. I didn't then, but yeah, I do now. There was a long pause, and then he said it. I'm glad you came. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a dramatic movie-style emotional outburst. It was better. It was real. That night, I sat alone on the porch. The air was warm, the sky fading into that perfect blue-gray twilight that always makes me nostalgic. I thought about all the moments that brought us here, the fights over bedtime, the Lego towers, the teenage silences, the envelope on the counter, the rose at graduation, the nod across the crowd, and now this, a quiet confirmation that I still mattered, even if I wasn't always in the photo. I pulled out my phone and opened the note I'd been writing in since all this began, the one where I'd written, "Who am I when I'm not the mom in charge?" And now, months later, I added a second line. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who adapted. I'm the one who never stopped loving, even as love changed shape, because that's what motherhood is. Not a title, not a performance, not even a role. It's a presence, a rhythm, a quiet kind of forever. And that night, when Daniel came out to say goodnight, when he hugged me for a second longer than usual, when he asked, "Do you need anything before bed?" When he looked me in the eye like someone who truly sees you, I didn't feel left behind. I felt found again. In a new way. In the way that matters now. If you enjoyed the story, give it a like and subscribe to the channel to support us. We'd also love it if you left a comment telling us which city you're listening from and whether you identified with this mother in any way. Have you ever gone through something similar to this story? If you can, share it with another mother who might be needing this dose of affection and hope. You are very important to us, and we thank you for being part of this community of reflection and love. Thank you so much, and see you next time.